Welcome to the Past Lives Cafe. I am your host, Chione, an intuitive energy worker and acclaimed past life regressionist. Come with me as we journey through the spiral of time to forgotten places. Welcome. This is Chione, the host of Past Lives Cafe podcast. Today we have a special guest, my sister, Michele Lee. Michele was immeasurably valuable in helping me get my QHHT certification. She allowed me to conduct a session with her so that I could submit towards the minimum unique session qualifications. But she also allowed me to practice with her on very specific sections of the past life regression process so that I could become an expert in those areas, whether it was leading the client into a meditative trance or it was working with the client's higher self in understanding life purpose or directed healing. And so I'm very pleased to have her share her experiences in doing QHHT, as well as some other experiences that she had in seeing past lives, especially because her experience is different than the traditional experience. So Michele, before we get started in learning about what you experienced during the QHHT process, I want to ask you if you believe that you actually lived these past lives, or do you believe this is a manifestation of certain aspects of you, certain archetypes that you may identify with, or maybe just a very active imagination?
Hi, Chione. How are you today? In answer to your question, I'm not really sure if they were past lives or if they are products of my imagination. But if I take them as both, then I think it's a very interesting outcome. Maybe what I have determined is that what I saw and experienced was put into terms from today's reality in order for me to understand the actualization of my past lives. And what I mean by that is, you had said that I had seen some very different and interesting things. Pretty much every time I've done a QHHT with you, I end up as a cartoon princess like Snow White and Jasmine. And while I think that's really cool, I'm certainly not a cartoon and not a princess in my normal life. But I think that what I have seen and learned over this particular lifetime allowed me to put into perspective the past lives that I experienced.
So you mentioned that you see yourself as a cartoon princess, but I do remember one past life where you did age.
Yeah, so the one that you're talking about was the first one when we did QHHT. So that's the one where I was sort of kind of Snow White. So I would flit in and out between looking like Snow White as a cartoon character and then a human being. But I lived in a shack in the woods, and I could see the woodland creatures, just like in Snow White, the rabbits, the chipmunks, the trees. I saw the forest as I saw it and remembered it in the Snow White books and films. And in that particular life, I was cooking over a fire, but in a large pot. We thought that maybe I was cooking for more than just one person because the pot was so large. And I was married in that particular life, although I never saw my spouse in the regression. Later, however, I did see me as an older person sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair, lamenting his death. In today's day and age, I still like to cook for people, even large groups of people, but also it goes to issues of poverty that I believe that I have been struggling with, or coming to the realization that maybe I'm really not as poor as I think I was, but I certainly have a fear about poverty, and felt like that past life and my early upbringing really contributed to that fear.
Right. And I remember asking you if you specifically were happy or content in that life, because it seemed when you were explaining how often you were out gathering, foraging for food, gardening, that it was a solitary existence. And I do recall your saying that you were quite content and quite happy to continue that life, and that you felt camaraderie with the animals that you encountered on a daily basis.
It's true. I really liked seeing the animals in the forest, and I sort of saw myself dancing around like Snow White does in the forest with the woodland creatures, and I was happy.
So, for those who may never have had a QHHT session, one of the phases of that session is after the lifetime has been experienced by the client, then very specific questions about why that lifetime had been shown to the client is asked. And then we delve even deeper into questions as far as soul purpose and threads that my sister already alluded to in her commentary about poverty and having enough food. We look at threads that may have been applicable from that specific life to this one. But in this case, she had a very peaceful death. She, of course, had lamented the death of her spouse. But the feeling you got as she was explaining it during session was that this is the cycle of life, and that we're born, we live, we age, we die. And so it was a very simplistic yet practical viewpoint. And so afterwards, knowing how at times chaotic our lives can be in the 21st century, I was really interested to know what her higher self, which is who we talked to in the post-session period, why her higher self felt compelled to have her experience that specific lifetime.
And I had the same thought then as I do now. I was very contented living this very simple life in the woods with the woodland creatures and having enough food just basically for me and my family. And I think it equates in this life that I've always wanted to search for more, have more money, have more prestige, have a bigger home, have a better car. And I think it was a really big reminder that not only do I have all that I need and all that I want, that I should just be grateful for what I have and remember that I was very happy living a much more simpler life. My higher self appeared as, once again, a cartoon figure, Merlin the Wizard, but he was very insightful, he meaning me. And part of what I took from healing from that particular session was some pain that I was having, particularly in the stomach area and also my hamstrings. I had some difficulty going up and down the steps, a lot of pain after a bicycle riding injury, and just digestive issues have been going on for a long time. So Merlin the Wizard had me form my hands into a ball, and I literally felt a ball of energy or fire. it wasn't painful, but we directed it over different areas of my body and sent healing energy to those areas. And I really did have a lot of improvement in those areas when I was finished with the healing. And it also led me to go seek out additional practitioners to help to continue to heal those particular areas.
It is not uncommon for my clients to see themselves in a non-human or traditional format. So in the case of my sister's regression, where she saw herself as if she was plopped into a Disney movie embodying Snow White, there are other people that have similar experiences, whether they see themselves in a photograph, even a very popular photograph, or they may see themselves in a specific movie with very recognizable characters. They may see themselves in a book, in a coloring book. And I have even heard stories of people saying they've seen themselves in comic books. So the way that people tend to see themselves varies. And I've had clients who were not even human, and they've seen themselves as completely different entities altogether, whether they're animal, flora. But the question I have for you, Michele, is if you felt that seeing yourself in a cartoon format changed the way you felt about that experience. We look at a cartoon, anything, whether it's just a short clip or if it's a full-blown Disney movie, we get the feeling that there will be lightheartedness, that there will be a lot of dancing and singing and probably magical endings. So it has an element of illusion. So I'm wondering if you felt that way when you were looking at this lifetime, or was the fact that you and your surroundings or cartoon characters, was that just accepted, but you had all the normal feelings and reactions that a normal traditional bodied person would have?
One thought that just sort of kind of hit me as we were talking about this is that maybe I was a cartoon because they're two-dimensional and they don't really present as having the world of emotions and feelings as you would see if you're reading a book or watching a real live movie. So maybe it was a way to protect myself and my feelings when I saw those particular images. But as I was going through being a cartoon character, I kind of flitted in and out. So sometimes I was, and I actually felt a little like Snow White, a little lighthearted, frolicky, dancing in the woods, rejoicing, happy to be there. But then I would flip back into being an actual human, and I could see myself. I could look down and see my feet. I could see my clothes. I could see my hands. I could see where I lived, and I just felt like a regular human being, having all the emotions that a human would have. Happy, sad, content, just living life, just knowing what my tasks were day to day.
You've had some other past life experiences, and I thought it would be interesting to share what those were and if you saw any commonalities weaving through those past lives that you witnessed and the ones that you witnessed while doing QHHT.
Once again, I was a cartoon character. I was Jasmine, Princess Jasmine, but on the beach, once again in a hut. So that's definitely a commonality that carries in. On another one, I was a scullery maid in a castle that was in the side of a mountain. So I sort of kind of got the feeling Austria, Germany area. But in that vision, I was responsible for going out and gathering herbs and roots and plants that I would use for cooking the meal once again. So I was cooking for large groups of people, and I was more in a servant type of role. It seems, at least in those past lives, I've all been very, not a movie star, not anyone rich, but really just someone normal, just working hard day to day to make ends meet. And then I have had several shamanic journeys, and I've seen a lot of different past lives come through. I was an Indian. I believe, something like an Eskimo. I was very cold. I saw like an igloo type of home. I was kind of walking all over the universe, basically. I remember crossing a handmade suspension bridge made out of wooden planks. I don't know, I didn't seem to have any sort of major wealth in those particular shamanic journeys, but I also wasn't really working. I was just moving from body to body. And then I had a reconnective healing, which I know is a little bit different than a shamanic journey and a QHHT. It's not necessarily a past life regression, but my understanding of it is it is supposed to help condense the past lives and get rid of past trauma so that you can move forward in the things that you're trying to do in this life. But I did see visions. I saw several faces. I felt a lot of different feelings, like tingling, burning in different parts of my body, things that I could hear. Felt like somebody was touching me, even though no touching occurs. But in one particular vision, somebody told me I was a yeoman. And when I woke up from the trance, I asked the practitioner what a yeoman was. I said, isn't that somebody that works in the sea or with the sea, like in the Navy? And she said I would have to look it up. So when I looked up the definition, there are a couple things. Yes, it could be somebody working with the Navy, but it also can be somebody who's a servant and helps basically take care of households. So I feel like there are a lot of recurring themes between the QHHT and the reconnective healing. Servanthood or servitude, being not wealthy, is all the current themes that I have experienced in my past life and, of course, struggled with in this life.
Past life regressions have really taken off within the last couple of years. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts as to why people would be so interested in a past life that they may have had and why connecting with it is so important to them.
Yeah, so I think about a phrase that our mom said to us all the time and still says, history repeats itself. So I think when people are trying to figure out, why am I so afraid of this spider, bridges, whatever, and they have no real reason in this life to be afraid of those things, or they're trying to figure out, why am I so stuck on this poverty thing, kind of like I was? Or what's my deal with relationships? Why do I seem to keep finding the same person and repeating the same patterns? So I think people have realized, because history repeats itself, that maybe it's not something just in this life that needs to be healed, but maybe it's something that's been going on for a long, long time. So if we go by the theory that we are here to learn, and we go by the theory that we keep coming back until we learn that particular lesson, I think people have become really more aware that their history have way more to do with their current lives than just their present life.
I think that's a really good point about learning from history. And there have just been so much research and theory around generational trauma that can stick with us that I think you're right. I think that could explain a lot of reasons why people would be looking to have a past life regression to see if anything comes up that shows a definite thread. Since you've had so many QHHT sessions, you're a professional regressioner, you can speak really clearly to what is one or two misconceptions that you may have had about the regression process and or how you would feel during the session that you can now kind of lift the veil off and explain what really happens.
One of the things that I was told was that I may not remember anything. I remember everything. I don't necessarily remember the feeling, but I definitely remember the images that I saw and all the cartoon characters that I played and everything that I did in those lives. The other thing is that I was told that I may have a lot of emotions that would come up after the fact. I actually didn't. I didn't have a lot of that come up for me later. But I can see where if somebody had a past life that showed some really terrible, horrible things happening to them, I could see where they would have a lot of emotional response after the fact.
Everyone's consciousness varies during a session. Some people find themselves in a very deep meditative state, and it's actually difficult to hear them. And for them, talking is a chore because they're so entrenched in that experience. And others, like you, don't have a deep meditative state. And what I want to clarify is whether you do or don't doesn't matter. As you can see, as many sessions as she's had, while she does not go into a deep meditative state and remembers primarily the gist of what she saw, it had no bearing. Because once those eyes are closed and once that brain has a focus point, then your ego mind steps to the side and you are able to tap into those visions and those feelings and those experiences just as easily as someone who is super, super deeply entranced. So yeah, it's absolutely perfectly fine and normal for some to have a lighter meditative state than others. And with regard to the emotional response, I'm glad that you brought that up. Most sessions I've conducted have been highly emotionally charged. And that is just as you mentioned, Michele, because people have experienced trauma. In one instance, someone lost a child as an infant. And for anybody out there listening who has animal children or children can imagine losing something that matters so much to you, whether it's in this current or past life or a dream. You know exactly how devastating that would feel. Other people suffered incredibly painful and traumatic deaths. A couple of people witnessed their loved ones being killed. And so the emotion that Michele speaks of is typically entrenched with what is happening in that past life and or specifically connected to a death in that past life. And so the emotional portion of that experience is something not only to not be afraid of, but to expect it. And for the founder, Dolores Cannon of QHHT, she believed that the more emotion that you had in response to a trauma, the more cathartic of an experience it is. And I have had clients literally walk out the door as if they felt like a 500-pound weight had been lifted off of them. The experiences that one person has is no indicator of what another person is going to have. And my sister did not have any traumatic deaths that would evoke such emotion. I got the feeling that she was more so taught a lesson as to why those specific lives, where she was in service to others, and where she comes from humble means, and that she was content, was supposed to be a grounding point for her in this lifetime. So one more question for you, Michele. When would you say a person should seek a past life regression?
Well, they too can do it to help somebody get certified. I'm just kidding, Chione. But also, but they can also do it when they're just curious, when they're seeking information about an attachment that they feel that they have in this life, fear that they have that seems unrealistic, pattern that they're looking to heal. I mean, pretty much anything. Even if you're just curious and just want to try it just once, just to see what comes up, because it might very well lead you to want to do something a little bit more, a little bit deeper, find out a little bit more about your past.
Thank you, Michele, for sharing your unique visuals and amazing experiences with us. I wanted to address something before we close with regard to the trauma that a lot of my clients and other people that have experienced past life regressions may witness. While it is definitely not a comfortable situation to find yourself in, I really encourage you to not let that hold you back from pursuing a past life regression if it's something that calls to you. And this is why. A trained and skilled past life regressionist will know how to lead you expertly through a traumatic time and will ensure what you're experiencing is not physically or mentally overwhelming to you. We have very specific techniques that allow you to observe or to remove you from the immediate pain if something like that would come up. And we're with you every step of the way, and the sessions are recorded. So you will be able to then go back and hear how we work together through the actual regression process. So oftentimes people will be trepidatious as far as pursuing a past life regression because they've had glimpses of things they believe are tied to a past life. For instance, maybe being burned in a fire, maybe experiencing watching their family drown, or other types of just very traumatic types of circumstances. And I promise them that I will never allow the individual to go any further into the scenario than what is healthy for them, and that I have tools and techniques to remove them appropriately when needed. The other thing I want to mention, and I did speak to this a little bit during the episode, is that a lot of times when we're looking to resolve an issue, running from the actual experience is not helping us resolve the issue. So walking through it, feeling the discomfort in a safe way is what a QHHT or a past life regression experience is all about. When you're looking for a past life regressionist, look for someone with a lot of experience who also has clients who can speak to their adeptness and their skill. And ask the regressionist, do you have two people that have had traumatic experiences that I can talk to? And find out how that session was handled and whether resolution was actually experienced. Is that fear still within them? Is there an awareness of where a specific fear or concern arose? Has that been something that is now manageable, if not gone? With that, I thank all of you for listening. If you've had a past life experience you'd like to share or have any questions, please email me at Chione@quantumjourneygo.com. Also visit Chloe and me as we talk to all spiritual seekers on the Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast. And remember, we can't live in the past, but we can heal it. Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in my services, visit me at www.quantumjourneygo.com or drop me a note at pastlivescafe.buzzsprout.com. Stay well and be present.